Hello, you are welcome once again to this class. When writing and notating music, sometimes we want a note to last longer than its time value. As you hopefully know, each different type of musical note lasts for a specific time. But what happens if you want to extend it? This brings us to the topic of this lesson, which is dotted notes and their values. In this lesson, we are going to look at how notes can be dotted, how notes can be extended using dotted notes. What is a dotted note? As simply as it sounds, it's a note with a dot next to the right of the note head as shown below. Now we have a note there and then we have a dot by that note. Now it's just right after that note there's a dot. That is how a dotted note is written. That is how it is written. Now what does it mean? Now it stands for half the value of the note it is added to. What that means is that the dots make the note last longer by adding on half its value. So if the note is 1, the dot will add half of 1 to the note. So and that will not be altogether, it will not be 1.5, because half of 1 is half itself. So when we add that half to 1, it now becomes 1.5. We want to look at the categories, the types of dotted notes. First, let's look at the dotted semibrief, otherwise called the dotted whole note. The dotted whole note. Now, we can add a dot to any type of note and it has the same effect. It doesn't really matter. It makes the note last longer by adding on half its value. Now, if you look at this dotted semibrief, originally we know that the semibrief has how many bits? That is 4 bits. But when you make it a dotted semibrief, we extend it. We extend the duration by half its value. Okay? So we extend its duration by half its value. So now in this case, we have something like this. This is the dotted semibrief. And that means that a dotted semibrief will not be this. The semibrief itself, half of a semibrief will give us a meaning. So a dotted semibrief is same as a semibrief plus a meaning. Plus a meaning. So that means if the semibrief is 4, the meaning, half of 4 will be 2. That means the meaning this time is 2 bits. So if we add that together, the total bits represented by a dotted semibrief will give us 6. Let's take the next one, which is a dotted meaning, also called the dotted half notes. Dotted meaning, and it looks like this. Now a dotted meaning has the value of 2 bits. So if we want to write it down by expressing it, by simplifying it, we'll say a dotted semibrief, a dotted meaning is equal to a meaning plus the note that is half of a meaning, which is a crochet, because a crochet is half of a meaning. We need two crochet to make a meaning. So that means that a dotted meaning will not be a meaning plus a crochet, and the meaning has 2 bits. So that equally means the total bits here will now be 2 plus 1, which will give us 3. Now let's go to the third one, which is dotted crochets, also called the dotted quarter note. Now the dotted crochet has the crochet itself, which is a quarter note, has the value of 1 bit. So by expression, a dotted crochet will now be equal to a crochet plus a quiver, because a quiver is half of a crochet. So that means that dot by the crochet is actually a quiver. It's actually a quiver, because if we say that the dot is half of the note and half of the crochet is a quiver, so that means the dot is a quiver. Now if we want to find the total beats here, already we know that the crochet or the quarter note is 1 beat. Then all together we are going to have 1 plus half, because the half of 1 is half itself. So when we add both together, that gives us 1.5. Now let's look at the dotted quiver, also called the dotted 8th notes. The dotted quiver, the quiver or the 8th note has the value of half of a beat. Half of a beat. So that means also that if we want to write it out, the quiver, a dotted quiver now, will now be expressed as a quiver plus a semi-quiver. The semi-quiver is half of a quiver, so if we add both together, that gives us a dotted quiver, because that semi-quiver is same as a dot, because the dot is half of the note it is placed by. Of course, we know that the quiver note is half a beat, so half of half, that will be 1/4. So half plus 1/4, that will give us 3/4. Let's take another one, which is the dotted semi-quivers or the dotted 16th note. The semi-quiver itself, or the 16th note, has the value of 1/4 of a beat. The semi-quiver has the value of 1/4 of a beat. So the dotted semi-quiver will now give us 1/4 of a beat plus half of that 1/4. Half of 1/4 is 1/8. So if we add both together, that gives us 3/8 beat. 3/8. The 3/8. So that gives us 3/8 beats, because the dot is now represented by 1/8, and that is the demi semi quiver. So the note that has 1/8 as its beat is the demi semi quiver in this example. So we have it as the dotted 16th note is equal to the 16th note plus the 32nd note, or the demi quiver. Now let's look at all these notes together. We started by looking at the dotted whole note, and I said the dotted whole note gives us the whole note plus half of the whole note, which is the meaning. The dotted half note, which is the dotted meaning, the same as the half note plus the quarter note, or the meaning plus the crochet. The dotted crochet is equal to the crochet plus the quiver, while the dotted 8th note or the dotted quiver is same as the quiver plus the semi-quiver. It can equally be expressed by saying that when we say dot add half, we are saying it's adding 50% of the value of the note it is added to. The value of the dot is determined by the value of the note first. If the note is 4, a dot placed by note 4, the note that has 4 bits will become automatically 2 bits. If the note has 2 bits, the dot placed by a note that has 2 bits will become 1 bit. The dot itself will now be 1 bit. So we have something like this. So if the whole note is 4 bits, then the dotted note is 6 bits. And if the half note is 2 bits, then the dotted half note is 3 bits. And if the quarter note is 1 bit, then a dotted quarter note is 1.5 beats. And if the 8th note is half beat, then a dotted 8th note will be a 3/4 beat. And if the 16th note is 1/4 beat, then a dotted 16th note will be 3/8 beats. Now let's summarize. We said a dotted note add half the value of the note it is added to. It add 50% of the value of the notes it is added to. So what that means is that the dot does not have a specific value in itself, unlike the notes that we studied in previous modules. Now the dot picks its value from the note it is placed after, like I have explained previously in this lesson. The dot of a dotted note is placed after the note or the rest symbol. It's not only used for notes, it's equally used for rest symbols. It is not placed before, it is not placed under, it is not placed above. The dot is placed after the note. That is what makes it a dotted note or rest. Of course, it's possible to have a dot on top, but then it will not be a dotted note. If it's on top, that is a musical expression. If it's underneath, it means another thing. But the moment it's after the note, it's a dotted note, and it affects the duration of the note it is placed after. Then finally, the total value of a dotted note is the sum of the value of the note and the dot. So when you are told to find the total value of a dotted note, you have to find first, you must know the value of the note, and then the value of the dot. You add both together, and that gives you the total value of a dotted note. That brings us to the end of this lesson. Before we go, I have an assignment for you. Look at these questions on the screen, write them down, try them on your own, find the value of the beats of the following expressions, write out the answers, and let me see whether you know it very well. See you next time. Bye bye.